This is one of those Cornish walks that doesn't shout about itself, but once you're out on it, it quietly proves its worth. Even with the tide right in and the sea doing its thing, it still feels like proper coast rather than a compromise. If you're after a short walk with space, views and a bit of wildlife without giving up half your day, this one from Portmellon fits nicely. I'm starting at Portmellon just around the corner from Mevagissey on the south coast of Cornwall. From here, you're joining a mix of Chapel Point Lane and a southwest coast path as you head west towards Chapel Point and Colona Beach. The out and back walk I'm doing today is just under 2 miles, so it's manageable, but it doesn't feel trivial. It works whether you're new to Cornwall or you already know this stretch of the coast reasonably well. Getting into Portmellon is straightforward, but the last part of the road is narrow and the parking is limited. On a quiet day it's fine, but when the weather's good it fills up quickly and turning around can be awkward. There aren't many facilities here, so it helps to arrive with realistic expectations. There is the Rising Sun Inn right by the beach, but it has seasonal opening hours, so it's one to check before you rely on it. If that's shut or you want more choice, heading back into Mevagissey usually makes more sense. Some people park in Mevagissey and walk over to Portmellon instead. It's just over half a mile on foot and includes a few hills, so it's easily enough if you're happy walking, but it's not flat. From Portmellon Beach, you start out briefly on Chapel Point Lane before dropping back onto the southwest coast path. Path climbs gently away from the water almost straight away. Today the tide is right in, so there isn't much beach showing and the sea's fairly lively. That can make it feel like you've mistimed it, but this walk isn't really about the sand. Once you're on the path, you still get the sound of the sea and that open exposed feel straight away. Heading towards Chapel Point, the walking is mostly easy. It's not polished or predictable. After wet weather, this section closest to the cliff edge can be muddy, so you do need to pay attention to where you put your feet. It's steady rather than difficult walking and it suits a relaxed pace. Chapel Point comes up before Colona Beach and you can feel the coastline opens out as you approach it. There's a private residence at the point now, and you can see the buildings as you pass, but access is clearly restricted. I think the name comes from a chapel that was once here, which would make sense for a Cornish headland, but I can't confirm whether anything of it still exists. This stretch of coast is known locally for grey seals, which haul out onto the rocks or just sit offshore when conditions suit them. It's not an official reserve and nothing's guaranteed, but seals do turn up here fairly regularly. Access is fenced back now because the cliff edge is unstable in places, not because it's meant to be a viewing area. If you're tall or you've got a camera on an extension, you've got a better chance of spotting seals on the rocks below. Even when you can't see much, you'll usually hear them, and quite often you can smell them as well. It's a working edge of the coast rather than something that's been set up for visitors. This is a good place to stop for a moment and take in the view across the bay. On a clear day, you can see right across the Nostril Bay towards Gribben Head. Carrying on from Chapel Point, the path curves gently on toward Colona Beach. Colona is a small tucked away cove that you only really reach on foot, which keeps numbers down. It's more sheltered than Portmellon and feels quite enclosed when you drop down toward it. With the tide high, there's only a narrow strip of sand, and at very high water it can almost disappear. At lower tide, more sand is exposed, but it never opens out into a big beach. There are no facilities here, and no road access, which is why it stays quiet even in summer. For most people, it's more of a place to pause than somewhere to settle for long. From here, the coast path continues on towards Gorran Haven. Going that way adds roughly another couple of miles and turns this into a proper half-day walk. For today, I'm turning back here and heading back towards Portmellon. On the return, I'm using Chapel Point Lane again instead of staying right on the cliff edge. It's higher, drier underfoot, and makes the walk back feel noticeably easier. But you lose a bit of drama, but you gain a calmer, more straightforward finish. There are two decisions here that generally change how the walk feels. One is whether to stick to the coast path for the views or use Chapel Point Lane to keep things simpler. The other is whether to turn around at Colona or carry on towards Gorran Haven and commit to a longer day. The walk itself is free, but parking availability and timing are the main pressure points. Dogs are common on this route, but with cliffs, fencing and wildlife, it's one for sensible control. This isn't suitable for wheelchairs or pushchairs. Anyone unsteady on their feet will find sections awkward. If you're spending a bit of time in Mevagissey as well, I've got a separate video that looks at the village itself in a bit more detail. This is a straightforward, honest coastal walk that does exactly what it needs to. It's not a headline attraction and it's not trying to sell itself. What you get is fresh air, wide views, seals if you take the time to look, and a manageable stretch of the southwest coast path. If you come expecting big beaches at high tide, you'll probably be disappointed. If you want a short walk that slots neatly into a wider day around Mevagissey, this one quietly earns its place. Thanks for watching. Until next time, cheers you.